Hello and welcome to a Monday night edition or Tuesday morning edition of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. My name is Pat Burnham, and I'm joined tonight by my brother Shane. Shane, big day for your household. Four girls started their 2025-2026 school years. How did that go? You've got them, junior in high school to second grade?
That's right. Junior, freshman at Childs, fourth and second grade over here in the neighborhood. But it was great. They were excited as they are the first day. We'll see how long that lasts. But they were easy to get out of bed today. They were super fired up, and everybody seemed to have a great day. They're all tired tonight. And my 16-year-old, her first day driving as a junior, so she was especially fired up to go find her parking spot. So a good first day.
Yeah, I'm sure she was happy not to be riding with me or you to school. So
Right.
good for her. I'll have to see how bad she missed us. All right, so we got a lot to talk about. We're going to try to keep it short, but before we get started, we do want to thank our sponsors, Home Instead of Tallahassee. We want to thank Scott and Todd Harrell, Dan Mowry and the Mowry Law Firm in St. Augustine, and Ascension Sports, Shane Burnham and his gang at Ascension. We're not going to do reads today because we got a short show, and we typically do them. So we're going to cover a couple things. We're going to talk about Florida State trip to Jacksonville for 2 days to practice. We're going to talk a little bit about their scrimmage on Sunday night here in Tallahassee. Probably not as much about the scrimmage itself as some of the things surrounding it. Number one, the coaching staff for the first time since Gus Malzahn, Herb Hand, Tony White, all that group got here. They got a chance to work inside Doak Campbell Stadium. Now, why it was not as important as what happened on the playing surface itself, it was the first time this staff got a chance to work together up in the box and on the field. We'll also talk a little bit about what the coaches said, Mike Norvell, Tony White, Gus Malzahn, and kind of play a big game of what they said, what we heard, as we always do. But and then we're going to get into a little bit of overreaction on Shedeur Sanders and the AP top 25. And listen, there was a lot of good quarterback play, not just from Shedeur, but Jackson Dart had a nice little day over with the New York Giants, and several of the other rookies did as well. So we'll talk a little bit about Shedeur, and listen, he looked good, but we'll get into that a little bit later. All right, Shane.
DJ, you had a big completion I saw.
Yeah. Somebody blocked for him. Somebody blocked for him finally. All right, so let's get into a little bit. I want to start with the Jacksonville trip, Shane. You have been on this trip, and we did something similar when I was at the University of South Florida when Skip Holtz took over the program from Jim Leavitt. He felt like our kids needed some bonding time after what transpired at the end of Jim's run there at USF. And so he took the team to Dodgertown. Now, we went for a week as opposed to 2 days, or a little bit over a day and a half. Basically, is what 2 days and a half is what Florida State does. Just talk a little bit about why Mike does that. Let's take people behind the line of scrimmage, behind the chains, out of bounds, whatever we're going to call this segment. But you've been a part of 3 of those trips to Jacksonville. I believe he started the first year he got here. Tell us a little bit about what the team gets out of that, both the coaches and the players.
Sure. I really think it's the idea of stress, shared suffering, agitation, being uncomfortable and trying to perform through all that, and just trying to put kids out of their comfort zone and get them together away from campus. It's part team building. It's part mindset. It's part, going on the road, so to speak. It's a road game. There's a lot of ways you can spin it as a staff. Mike does a lot of team building on this trip. He always has, whether it's Dave and Buster's. There's a bonfire by position where, guys get up and share if they feel compelled. And, I think it's intended to be that way where guys do feel compelled to share and kind of kumbaya moment. So I think he's trying to manufacture some of that on this trip. I don't know. Again, I'm like you. I've traveled to a few different places. We've gone away for camp. I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, as long as the organization and the structure to support it, which Mike and those guys and Bruce do a great job in the University of North Florida in partnership. But as long as it can go off without a hitch, I think in the net of it's a win for Mike.
Yeah, the real stress is on the operations staff and the equipment team.
That's a lot. It's a whole operation. When you do that, essentially you're going for what I think they went an extra day this year, maybe just one day longer. But yeah, I mean, you're picking up the entire Jason Baisden, his crew, Bruce, the whole Carol, the whole organization moved. It's like a bowl game. We take everything there, staff meeting, exists in one of their meeting rooms, all the position breakout rooms, your video setup, your grease board, all the equipment that supports us as a staff and as players, whether that's athletic training or the actual EQ staff. It's just a huge operation, but they've done a great job. But it's uncomfortable. You're sleeping in a dorm room, right? You bring a blanket, you bring your own pillow and you have a sheet, and it's the mattress is about that thick, and you're on one of those freshman dorms. And even as coaches, by the time you get to the third day, hell, I'm pissed and I'm angry and I'm ready to get back to my bed. And so I think he wants to see that get stirred up in practice. And I know he talked earlier in the summer about, not having to do that, but I think he believes it's important to put those guys in that situation.
Yeah. My question to you, obviously how we did at USF doesn't mean it's the right way, right? We would go from 7 to basically 10 days. I can't remember exactly how long it was. Do you think there is a rhyme and reason that he just does it for 2 days or 2.5 days to kind of keep people uncomfortable? Or do you think, that maybe if this is something, the longer he does it, maybe he starts to extend this thing out over a number of days, where it kind of makes it worth the squeeze, right? Makes the juice worth the squeeze type of thing. Do you think that you'll ever see Mike extend this to maybe taking it further south, and go get in front of fans and boosters? Or do you think it's going to always stay Jacksonville and 2 to 2.5 days?
That's a great question. And obviously he did extend it this year, like we said. I don't know. Like when I was at Rutgers, we put him in the hotel for in a 2 week, and they had to be on the bus, and we did make them suffer for a long time. Wisconsin, I believe. Wisconsin just left their camp. They go up to in Platteville, maybe. But at any rate, I could see him extending it because it certainly seems like, I know he loves it. It's his favorite part of camp. It always has been since I was there, and he always looks forward to it and loves what he gets out of it. I know he thinks he gets a lot out of it, so I could see him extending it, moving it. I don't know, that UNF crew, man, they do such a great job, Pat. Even in the 3 years I was there, to see it grow over the 3 years I was there, just the way they support FSU and what they're doing. I think it's a really good partnership right now.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, whether it's 2 days, 7 days. I think it's a great time. I know at USF, obviously we had something every night for the players. We did Camp Olympics. Everybody had to sing the fight song before they could leave camp. You couldn't get back on the bus until you sang the fight song. We went through every night in our last team meeting. We did that. Camp Olympics were actually great. They dressed us up like we were 1920 Olympic officials. We had on these little fedoras, and it was all the ops guys and all the GAs did all the judging. So
Mike does that. Mike puts on the rookie night or the skit night, right? And you judge. Yeah, so it really is that. It's supposed to be an event. It's supposed to be a stressor that also, brings them together. But they do all those things, and I do think it's fun. Even like in my time looking back, even though it's not a huge deal, you do kind of look back on it with some fondness because it's what's great about football. The sacrifice and the uniqueness of what people give up for the sport. So yeah, I love that part of it.
Skip even made the coaches sing the fight song before we got on the bus. So that was kind of fun. All right, so let's bring it back to Tallahassee. The team came back to Tallahassee on Saturday. I think the players had the day off, and then they had a scrimmage last night on Sunday night. Before we get into what the coaches said about what happened on the field on Saturday, I think I want to talk about the coaches themselves because, again, weather impacted this second scrimmage in Tallahassee. Mike said they got 100 plays. Some of it was inside due to lightning. Then they finally got back outside, and we'll get into what he said about that. But one of the things that caught my attention, and I did not realize this, with all the stadium construction that's been going on since the end of last season, the staff and the team had not been in there for a practice. Obviously, there was no spring game this year. There was not going to be ever going to be a spring game because of the construction. I did not realize until Mike said it, this is the first time this new staff with 6 new assistant coaches, a couple of new analysts / GAs, that's the first time they've got a chance to go into the press box and be on the sideline with this team. I think a lot of people don't understand the importance of that. Obviously, you're a 24-year veteran of college football. I don't know if you've ever been in the box. I know you were always on the field that I remember.
A very brief time. I did not enjoy the box at all, and I can get into that in a minute, but I did not enjoy the box. Very brief time.
All right, so I think this is probably something nobody else is talking about, and another reason that we want to do this podcast, take people behind the scenes. Outside of what happened on the field yesterday with the players, is probably the most important thing the staff has done, because I don't think people that have not been on the sidelines or not been in the press box know exactly how that's carried out. And listen, you got 10 to 15 people on headphones, probably more than that these days. I don't know what the legal limit is. I know at one time they restricted it, but just talk about why they have made that such a why that is such a crucial part of what Mike did on Sunday night.
Yeah, it's huge, and obviously new staff even more important. But even with the veteran staff, just to get the mechanics of that, and to take you behind the scenes, the last thing we do as a staff, on almost any defensive staff I've been a part of, on Saturday morning as we head off to the bus, is go over game day eyes. And what I mean is the coordinator's calling out, "Hey, Shane, make sure our eyes are here today. So and so, your eyes are here," and they're the same place every week, right? We know where our eyes need to be, but it's something how we're communicating after a series. What are we communicating after a series? Those are all covered because every week it might be different, whether it's protection you're after or something they're doing formation of the boundary, whatever it might be. But you're certainly going over all that. As a staff, that takes work. It takes coordination between series, especially at a scrimmage when there really is no between series, so to speak, as an offensive, defensive staff. What has to be communicated between snaps, so where the eyes are, and then how that communication flows and who it flows to after a series when we huddle. There's just a mechanic to get that coaching to the bench after we huddle after the series as a staff. So, but there's a flow chart to that, right? The coordinator wants to hear from someone first about whatever that guy's responsible for seeing on the field, whether it's from the sidelines or up in the box. The personnel guy, you're probably breaking in a young GA. And that's the thankless job, the most thankless job in sports, is you've got the binocs and you're down there looking at what personnel Mike and Gus are throwing out there. And when you're wrong and you call 11 and they put 12 out there or vice versa, you get your ass ripped.
Yeah, you do.
And you didn't realize how important that job was. So even that's a stressful job for a young player. A young coach, it can be. So all that has to happen and it has to be worked out. And there's always, like anything else, there's going to be a bug or a kink along the way. But that's critical to the staff. And then, like I said, even just the way they are able to take that information they're all talking about and then get it to the players. I mean, there's a process to that. Who's talking to who? There's sideline organization, who sits where. I mean, it's a huge piece of what these coaches are trying to get in place with both sides of the ball being new.
Yeah, and it's organized chaos. And what I think most people don't realize is just because you got 20 people on the headset, not 20 people are talking. To like you said, it's very, when I kind of got thrown to the fire at South Florida, I always went up with the coaches and football ops, just to hang out, sit up in the press box, watch the game from there, make sure if something happened, somebody in ops was up there to take care of it, whether it's headphones going down, anything that might happen. And we had a GA that couldn't handle it in his first game. And so Vernon Hargraves looks at me and goes, "Can you do this?" And I said, "Do what?" He goes, "Call out personnel groupings and do this down and distance Tennessee chart." And I said, "Sure."
Sounds easy. That sounds easy, sure.
Yeah, and so the thing I did not have that game, I had, luckily they had a scouting report up there, so I start perusing it real fast. Hey, these are their favorite formations, and I was able to do a good job, and then I kept on doing it for the next 3 years after that. Now, it made it fun as an ops guy, but you're right. It could get intense. I remember one night, Skip Holt threatened to fire me, Mark Snyder, Vernon Hargraves, and the equipment manager, who was not on the headphones, over something on the headphones. So it's interesting, and it is a vital part of what they do. And
you find out sometimes when you do this, I think, like, again, I went up in the box. I was a young coach. I had played linebacker. I thought I had really good eyes when I played. I thought I could see the field. I wasn't very fast or big or a lot of things, but I could see really good. And I always like, as a young coach, being on the field, I thought I could gain a perspective and give feedback in a way that was beneficial. You put me in the box and, just because I had not been up there. I mean, I saw everything. What I mean is I tried to see all 22 too much. You know, and I remember about halfway through that season, we figured out this was not, you know, conducive to what we were trying to do. And I found that even when we were at Florida State, you know, if you guys remember, Randy at one point was on the field with us when we were both analysts, and that was our job to huddle with Adam after the series. The minute that staff changed, you know, we wanted Randy's eyes upstairs. That's where he'd always coordinated from, and he was now allowed to wear a headset. So Randy went up. That's where he's most comfortable seeing. Randy didn't think he saw enough from the field. He'd get really frustrated down there, and he'd want to be up in the sky. So you got to find out where guys are comfortable and then work out. If they're not comfortable, you got to get them comfortable.
Yeah. They finally got that done. That's a big lick for this staff to finally get a chance to do that. And it didn't even dawn on me until Mike said it that they had not had that chance. And it'll be interesting. Listen, I'm looking forward to seeing who they have in the box and who they have on the field and how that works out. But yeah, so that was something that organizationally that was huge for Mike and his staff to get through. All right, so one thing he did say, it was good to hear communications need to be more efficient. So there's clearly some bugs that he wants to work out before they get to Alabama. And I would assume that even if they don't go to a forced scrimmage, Shane, they're probably going to go back in that stadium, at least with a walkthrough type of thing, where they've got the coaches in the box doing game, you know, doing the, I guess that pseudo game he likes to do. Doesn't he do like kind of a fake game?
Yeah, most guys I've been around, you know, the mock game where you're just trying to go through every substitution, you know, every situation. Somebody loses a helmet, make sure the sideline's ready. Somebody goes down, you know, with an injury and there's no timeout. You know, we crawl off the field. You know, you try to hit a lot of situational stuff in that last scrimmage. And I guess they got, 2.5, almost 3 weeks until they play. So, you know, you could see them going out there and whether you know, if it's scrimmage heavy one more time in the stadium, especially since they got rained out, it sounds like for half of the
it is
most recent one. Yeah, so I could see them going back in there. Yeah, especially what time? What time's the Alabama game?
3:30 in the afternoon.
Okay, so not you know no need to get under the lights, so to speak, and catch punts or kicks. But sometimes that's a factor with a night game. You want to get in your stadium under those lights.
Yeah, well, they haven't had a chance to do that. They got 45 new kids on this team too, so they probably do. They probably do need to do that. Of course, it's going to be interesting. I think once we get into the season to see how Mike operates on the sideline this year, since he's not calling the plays. Is he going to be able to refrain himself or saying something when he needs to, or is he going to, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that transpires. All right. So we did hear, you know, they did hit the field on Saturday, Shane, for our Sunday night for the second time. And of course, you know, I've been doing this for 6 years, and we often on my old show, which I should have brought the subscribers over with since I built that show. We should have.
Somebody spread the word. Get them over here. Let's go.
That's right. So we used to play what they said, what we heard. And Mike said they went about 100 plays. It was competitive, back and forth. He did mention a couple things, and I will say this: as you get into all these third-party intel by guys that cover the program, and even when we talk about what they talk about in their press conferences, which we've done for years, I think it's as important, kind of like watching huddle tape, right? It's what I used to tell people that I was trying to help learn how to break down huddle highlights. They're highlights, right? So it's more important to notate what you don't see on a huddle tape than what you do. And I think that when you're listening to Mike Norvell and Tony White and Gus Malzahn talk, yes, it's important to listen to what they are saying, but it's almost as important to listen to what they're not saying and who they are not talking about as much as it is who they are talking about. Now,
so it's what they said and what you didn't hear.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot. It works both ways. You're exactly right. All right. So I don't want to get into a whole lot about what Mike said, simply because, you know, Mike tends, and this is not a criticism, it is his style and has been since he got to Florida State. He kind of stays on message, right? He's never going to waver much. You're not going to hear him praise somebody too much, criticize somebody too much. He kind of stays on message. Now, I do want to put this up there, and it's probably going to drive you crazy because I think it's going to it's going to go up in front of us. But I got this from our boys at War Chant, Irish O'Fell, Jeff Cameron, and those guys. 11 different times after Sunday night scrimmage, Mike Norvell praised FSU team for its fight and competitive spirit. This is something we seldom heard or saw in 2024. And I went back to thinking about that when I saw Ira post it. And he's absolutely right. I don't remember last year hearing Mike mention fight much, physicality much. He did mention size, strength, explosiveness, all the things that we heard about from their catapult numbers, but we never heard about toughness or that kind of thing in the season. Do you remember him? And maybe he did in 23 because you guys had a lot of guys with fight on that team. Same thing with 22 when you have a Verse and a Fisk and a Bethune and a Azariah and those kind of kids, you do have fight, but I certainly agree with Ira in that we did not hear it very much, if at all, last year. How different is that from how Mike used to talk about the team when you were there 21, 22, and 23? Is there any difference? Did he talk about fight, physicality as much? Maybe behind the scenes?
I think he always, the message to our kids was smart, fast, and physical, right? And that's the way he preaches to those young men is if you want to play physical, you got to play smart, know your technique, know your game plan, know your playbook, where you're going, so you can move in that direction with speed and certainty. That's where it started. So fast, then that's being explosive. That's the weight room. That's how you train. That's playing fast. And all that allows you to be physical when you bring all that with the correct mindset. I always thought that was his message: smart, fast, physical. I'd have to go back. I didn't really pay a lot of attention to what Mike said in the media, to be honest with you.
Right.
It was just kind of what and not that it's a ton different, but it certainly is. I mean, it's a little different when you're in the staff room. So yeah. I can't say that, I don't know what the messaging was to the media. I do know he's introduced a few new drills in camp that are.
I saw the goal line tackling type drill between the running back and linebacker.
And we've had that one in the past. He's done some goal line down there in Jacksonville. It's only once a year. That's where I think, well, golly, if you're only doing it once a year, I don't know how much benefit it is, right? It's more for show than it is dough. But I guess what I'm saying is, what am I saying? I got off my point there. What the hell was I saying, Pat? Talking about being. He tried to put more physical drills. He's put a few new drills in the camp, even beyond that one. He's repeated that one. So I know, again, that he's, I guess, tried to implement that into the practice itself. And then, again, if his coaches are demanding they thud, they step on toes, that they are physical in their drill work, and even though they're taking care of each other, all that's got to be demanded by your staff to get to be physical. I go back to when I was there. I always thought the lack of turnovers we created as a defense when I was at Florida State, because I didn't think we were very good at doing that, started that we didn't run to the ball as well as we should have. Right. And that goes back to Mike: fast, speed, get there. I didn't think we always got there with a bunch of urgency and violence when we arrived. So I think the coaches got to demand it beyond Mike, is what I'm saying. And it sounds like maybe that's what he's getting out of this team and the staff.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what I was getting ready to say. One of the things that, first of all, to what Mike said, and I've seen several comments on social media about it. Well, we heard similar things last year, and they're talking about the size, speed, and strength, not necessarily the fight. And we never saw that size, strength, and explosiveness show up on Saturday. I think a lot of people are reluctant to buy into it. I think if it's true, it's a great thing for Florida State, obviously, because we did not see a lot of physical or mental toughness out of this team last year. So I hope it's more than Mike speaking it the truth. And we've talked about before, Mike can be I'm going to speak it to an existence guy, right? I mean, and you have a lot of guys like that in college football. So I think it's going to be interesting. And listen, that's going to have to show itself week 1. So we will find out really quick whether that's true or not. But, and my second point, Shane, as you know, I don't know how much time, and I don't think you probably have had a whole lot of time to listen to Tony White and Gus Malzahn talk about the scrimmages or practices, but I can tell you those two guys in particular, Tony White, is not afraid to hold a guy as accountable and hold his side of the ball accountable when he's talking to the press. And I kind of like that because it's totally different than what Adam would say. And on offense, what Gus is saying is totally different than what Alex Atkins is saying. You're getting some honest answers about kids. And when they don't have something nice to say, particularly on Tony White's side of the ball, he doesn't mention their name. I can already tell you, I can see a pattern developing there. But I do like it because, listen, as we go to this NFL type college football system, you guys there's guys on that football team that are making high six figures, low seven figures. If they're not doing it, you need to call them out just like you would in the pros. I said before, these kids are going to have to grow up faster because of their fact that they are now making a living. They're not just playing college football. But I kind of want to get into a little bit about what they said overall. I'll start with Mike. He just mentioned, what we've heard before, competitive back and forth, and that is something that obviously you would expect in a scrimmage, right? You're running the 1s, 2s, and 3s. The names that keep on coming up with Mike are Jeremiah Wilson, the cornerback from Houston. Apparently, he had a great interception. He did talk about Castellanos, as did Gus, threw an interception on their opening drive for the 1s, and then followed that up with 2 drives for touchdowns. Listen, it's camp. I'm not going to make a big deal out of interception. And he did respond the way they wanted to, and came back with 2 touchdown drives. But I don't know how you can make much of that other than they are trying to build confidence in Castellanos. And Gus did also said that, he thought he was making more transition or had developed better as a passer, or come a long way in his ability to throw the ball, read defenses, all the things that go into the pass game, since he had him at UCF, and he should. He's played in 20 games at a Boston college. So, it was interesting to see that, but they were very happy with the way he came back and led the team to 2 touchdowns, including the long throw to Squirrel White, the Tennessee receiver. Now, I want to ask you this question.
Okay, and then I want to add something to your previous point.
Okay, go ahead. My question. Wait.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go 3 parts. You talked about the physicality of the team and what they're seeing, and the way the kids, the way they're responding. I still think that's part of it. And then how do you respond when they get in a tough situation, whether that's Georgia Tech last year or Memphis? It's always interesting to see how these kids respond, not just Florida State, any team. It's just the personality of the team and how they can handle the adversity. So that's one thing. B, Tony White, when you're talking to the media as a coach, I remember the first job I ever had, and it wasn't even a big school. It was at a 1AA, University of Richmond, and Jim Reed was our head coach. And he used to say, hey, when you're talking to the media, you're talking to your team. And that was a point he made. And whether you want to, like you said, pat him in the butt or kick him in the rear, however you chose to do that, that was your chance to do it. And then with Gus and the quarterback and what Tommy's doing, I always think, and we're going to go back to running the ball, which I think Gus has done. I always think if you can run the ball, then I can create pass game, and I can find what Tommy does well, whether that's move the pocket, off the RPO, the play action. We all know that. If you can run the ball, which again, big offensive line, heavy there, and the portal, that would take some pressure off Tommy. I just, if Tommy's got to go back there and drop back, whatever, 40 times a game, not good for Florida State.
Well, as our buddy Justin Hokason from AuburnSports.com, the key to Auburn Gus's offense is running the ball. All right, so I do have this question for you, for both of us, really. I wasn't expecting it. I don't know that I'm going to make a big deal out of it. I know some people did, but it looks like Kevin Sperry, the freshman from Oklahoma, the true freshman quarterback, got most of the snaps with the twos. Now, listen, there could be multiple reasons for this, right? I mean, both Gus and Tony kind of intimated that, hey, this is a second scrimmage. It's time for you to show whether you can be a part of what we're going to do in 2025 or not, right? There's a lot of analogies I can use and none family friendly, so I'll stop where I'm at. But listen, the kid was athletic when we saw him in the spring. He did have a good scrimmage when we were there. I think it's important to note that when his first scrimmage, that was a scrimmage we saw, one of two they had in spring practice. He was going against a team that was installing a new defense, right? I didn't read too much into it. Those guys were learning how to operate in a system. But how do you read into Sperry getting the snaps? And
Sure.
let's just assume the other two quarterbacks were healthy, and then we can break it down from there.
Which I do. I assume they both were healthy. There are certain positions that you have a hard time evaluating. What I mean is this: I can put a third team D tackle, a third team guard, and I can put them against really ones, twos, or threes, and I can watch him have success or not have success and make a judgment. His job is not dependent on anybody else, typically, right? I mean, double team combos, what have you. Quarterback's different. If you have a bad cast around you, there's really no way for you to shine. And it's the same way if you're trying to evaluate a young linebacker and you're putting him behind the 3D line and there's a bunch of AYOs in front of that kid and the O-line's climbing to him without any obstruction. It's hard to gauge a linebacker. So I think certain positions, quarterback being one of them, to give the kid a fighting chance, to give him a fair chance. I'm sure not many people in today's college football have a 3 deep that's worth a damn, especially at the line of scrimmage. So it might just be that, give the kid a chance to go compete with some better people around him. And I'm assuming both guys are healthy. I really am. You need to have 3 quarterbacks to play. You talked about it a couple of weeks ago, the injuries that they've had here, and I'm sure Mike knows that. Just look no further than what Brock had to go through.
Yeah, and some of my notes, there could be multiple reasons. Feel like they know what Brock can do. Needed to see if the young pup could handle the heat against some good competition. Was Brock nicked up? Who knows? Did Brock get some rest with the ones? I don't know. I'm not trying to get these sources because we're not just covering Florida State, so I'm not as finely tuned into their practices. I'll read up more on that as the days go on. But yeah, so I thought that was significant and could be for multiple reasons, right? It could be, hey, we need to see what this cat's got before we go into the season, and he could get pressed into action. As you said, we've seen 3 quarterbacks start games for Florida State over the last 2 seasons. Another thing that stood out to me, because it's a big question mark on the offense, is Gus really only mentioned 3 receivers. And I think that is going to be the biggest question mark besides Castellanos and turnovers heading into this season is who's going to be productive at receiver. He mentioned Deuce Robinson, Javon Boggs, and Squirrel Wright. Did not mention anybody else by name. Said they needed to, the other guys really needed to step up, right? And Gus and Tony both made comments that, hey, it's time to show what you can do and see if you can help this football team. So I'm a little bit concerned about that you've only got 3 receivers that you felt like calling out by name. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but that is something that stood out to me. You see it more from a coach's angle. Am I reading too much into that?
As long as you feel like you can get all 3 on the field at the same time and in that offense, and that they can, I go back to Keon and Johnny, and really didn't matter who we played at slot. They're going to have some success there because of what the coverage was forced to do on the outside. So if you can get them all 3 on the field at the same time, you got a shot. I think, that's a legs position, right? The season's long. It wears on you, soft tissue. I don't think you want to roll 3 guys out there that heavy as far as their rep count. So, I know BJ Gibson, I'm partial to him. Ascension Sports' very own BJ had 2 touchdown catches in the scrimmage before. So let's go BJ Gibson. I don't know who's messed up.
I need his number. I need a source.
And I don't know who else, is showing up other than, you need more than 3. But if those 3 guys on the field at the same time,
and they probably will be a lot. There's no doubt about that. Listen, Mike and Gus both talked about the running backs. A lot's been made of Kromah. He's been getting a lot of press. A lot of people with inside knowledge seem to think he's had a very good camp. I know Gus said that he needs to learn to play without the ball. That sends off the first thing I think about is blocking and pass blocking, in particular, blitz pickup. Obviously, everyone that's a Florida State fan has seen the famous goal line tackling drill where he is destroying Blake Nicholson. Listen, those things happen in practice. Don't read too much into it. You only got to go ahead.
And no offense, I love Blake Nicholson. He's a great kid. He's going to be a really good football player this year for them Seminoles. But, I mean, I don't recall him knocking the dust off anybody the last couple of years.
Yeah, he's more of a speed guy than a power guy. That's the way I'd put it. All right, and then Gus said first team OL. He feels like the offense has come along simply because the first team OL that we think is going to line up did not practice much in the spring. They're still getting their timing down, but certainly seems that feel like they're coming along, but have a ways to go before they're all the same page and as good as they can be on offense. So we'll stop there on offense. Listen, the one thing I will say is we did hear today that Amaree Williams did play some tight end in the scrimmage on Sunday night, and Gus was very happy with what he saw. That kid's going to play a ton of snaps if he's taken. I think he's going to be a force on defense, and I think they're definitely going to have a role for him on offense. It sounds like a package anyway. I continue to be impressed with that kid. I was impressed with what I saw last season. Again, this is supposed to be his freshman year of college, right? And he's going to be a sophomore, and he's going to play on both sides of the ball. Just talk about what kind of athlete he is before we move on to the defense.
You know, I was part of his visit when he came on with his folks, and raw boned at the time because he said he was a young kid who was reclassing from junior to senior year, but very athletic, just really easy, smooth mover. We knew there was a chance he'd play both sides when we recruited him. That was part of the recruitment with him. And then I think it comes down to personality sometimes. I have not seen the kid play much last year. I didn't get many snaps of him watched. But I do think guys have offensive or defensive personality. Some guys want to go run into you, and some guys want to run away from you. So I'm curious, how that comes out. I thought he was a physical kid in high school. I'm curious which side of the ball he's drawn to. And the hard part when you're doing that to me is just, it's one thing to send, DJ Lundy over to fullback and, let him get a running start and run his face into somebody and knock the crap out of him, which is awesome. I love that. He was awesome at it. It's tight ends a little bit different. I mean, because you are involved in whatever combination blocks, you are involved in the route tree and in protection. So I'm curious how they're going to manage all his time at practice.
Well, he's just like Sidney Sweeney. He comes from great genes. The son of Mo Williams, the famous Kentucky running back that had such a great career for the Wildcats.
Can I tell you a story? Hold on. We're not moving. We got to talk about Mo. So we're having dinner at what's the little bar down there in Campus Town we always go to take the recruits. Township, West Town Township. What's it called?
This Township, I believe.
The Township. So we take recruits to the Township. So Mo comes in with Amaree and his mother, and we're sitting there having lunch and talking about our past. I played at South Carolina, and Mo played at Kentucky, obviously, and he had a much more accomplished career. But he's sitting there. He's like, "You remember? Were you there in '95?" I'm like, "Oh, 96. Yeah, I was there." I think I was starting backer, and he's like, "Yeah, I think I went for 290 or some crazy stat." I'm like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure enough." So I looked it up. I think Mo Williams might have tied, got close to an SEC rushing record that day on yours truly and the Gamecocks.
Was it at South Carolina or was it at Kentucky?
It was at South Carolina, as he said, and I don't remember. I think we were 3-1 versus those guys in my time, but I do remember the loss, and I'm pretty sure.
I wasn't a GA on 96, so if it was 95, I wouldn't have been there for that game, or I wouldn't have. If I was there at that game, I was enjoying 5 points and the cockabooses and all of those things.
It might have been 95. I don't know if it was Mummy or Bill Curry was the head coach. I remember Mummy. I do remember the air raid and Leach and those guys when they first came through the SEC back in the 90s. That was wild.
Yeah, that was fun. Hatcher was there. Chris Hatcher was
Hatcher. That's
QB
right.
coach. I remember going up there the first time we played him when Mummy was up there, and there's a guy named Stan on his staff, and I cannot remember Stan's last name. He was an older guy at the time, and so it was Stan and Hatch, and they were showing me and Zach Willis around the stadium. They were just happened to be there finishing up their walkthrough as we were getting ready to start ours. It was a Friday, and I remember meeting those dudes. That was a interesting time.
That was a job. I interviewed for a job at Kentucky about 10 years ago and didn't work out. But, man, I wanted to go there. Just beautiful place. All those horse farms seemed like a great place to raise a family.
Yep. It is a pretty place. And I think we went 1-1 there when I was a GA. We played Kentucky once at home. I think Tim Couch was the quarterback, if I can remember correctly. All right, let's switch over to – go ahead.
No, I was going to say also on kickoff there, my first time ever covering a kickoff, if I remember, on the road. I think the first kickoff in '94, I'm pretty sure I got knocked down 3 times on one play. It was terrible.
It's happened to everybody. I kept on looking for Ashley Judd in the stands, never saw her. I was disappointed. All right, so let's go to defense and listen to Tony White for a second, because this man is a breath of fresh air, and maybe it's because he's new, and maybe it's because they haven't lost a game yet, and maybe because they haven't given up a point, and maybe it's all of those things, and maybe because he's a former player at UCLA and played for Rocky Long and all of that. But there's a lot of reasons to like him. But here's what he had to say.
There's some guys who showed out, guys who are building the coach's trust and the confidence of their teammates, and there's some guys who need to, quite frankly, step their ass up. I never get upset when the ball beats you, but if you're not doing what you're being trained to do and you're not playing your butt off, then that is unacceptable. That is not right. And there's flashes of that from, there's just too much of that. So we got to limit that and move forward. There's some guys who.
All right, yeah, that's from our boys at War Chant too. I want to thank Ira the guys for that. Listen, I like it, Shane. That's totally different than anything Mike would say. Totally different than anything Adam would have said when he was here. I think it's refreshing. It certainly sounds like the accountability, particularly on that side of the ball, that we've all wanted to see over the last, or certainly since the beginning of last season. Certainly sounds like he's going to hold people accountable, and he's not calling them out by name, but I guarantee you the players in that locker room knows who the hell he's talking about.
There are, when he talked about that building trust. I mean, that's at some point, are you a foxhole guy? Can I trust you to play hard? Everybody gets beat. We all get knocked on our ass. We all give up a play in our gap. We all miss tackles. That's part of playing football. You win and you lose. What is unforgivable sin to me as a player and as a coach is guys who won't give it up, and I can't trust your effort, really. And then if I'm Tony, you got to demand that. I really think when you have the greatest compliment you can pay a coach, the greatest thing you could ever say to me as a coach when I coached a kid was, man, your kids play hard. When you told me that after a game, before a game, when I played you, when I saw you on the road recruiting, man, your kids play hard. All right, because not everybody does. And it's, you turn that tape on and it jumps off the screen. I think back to Florida 2 years ago in the overtime game versus Arkansas at home. If you are objective and you turn that tape on, they didn't play hard. It was lazy effort. Go back to Jacksonville State when we got beat. Go watch that clip. We were not playing hard. So if you can get kids to do that, especially the kids like you have at Florida State, if they'll just turn it loose and play hard, you got a shot. So certainly love that he's demanding it and holding guys to the standard.
Yeah, and get a little further into what he said. He goes, guys are not doing what they're trained to do. So obviously assignment football technique, they're not doing that. The guys he's frustrated with. And then probably the thing that really kind of struck out to me was he actually said they're not playing their butts off. And again, so that's been an issue here. He's trying to correct it. And when you have a new staff, sometimes guys are going to spit the bit, right? They're just not going to respond. They're used to doing things the old way. I know of one longtime starter there that is rumored not to be a starter anymore. You know who I'm talking about. And that guy seems to be spitting the bit. He's never been held. He's been here almost 5 years. And those are the guys that are going to be the ones that fight this new system the most, right? Because they're used to doing things a certain way. But I was very happy to hear him. I like it. I like Tony's intensity. I do think he is a former player, a good player at UCLA, I believe a 3-year starter. I think he's kind of got, what we talked to our dad about and Coach Andrews last week. I'm not going to say he's either one of those guys. He's got a long way to go to prove that. We know their history. But he seems to be a guy that can walk that fine line between busting a guy's ass and then making sure that they got a good relationship off the field, right? And the
truth is, like when I interview play, I coach hard. I want you to know I coach hard. What do you mean you coach hard? Does that mean you cuss and yell? No. I mean, yes, but no. What it means is for me it does. But for coaching hard, it's just that it's demanding. It's And if you're not going to do it, I'm going to sit you down and find somebody else. Again, I don't know exactly what they're doing to reinforce the concept, if they're, what the consequence is, what the penalty is, if it's the bench, if it's the playing time, if it's some type of post-practice punishment. But yeah, I think that's the key. I think I told that to Mickey and Dad. When you turn that tape on from when we were kids here, on the Florida State coaches system, there's a video catalog of tape. So when I got back here at Florida State and I had a little extra time, I'd go back and watch a game from '85. Or I'd watch a game from '87, and just because those were the guys we grew up with. And when they'd come to see Florida State and they'd be up in the office, I'd say, guys, come here. So whether it was Charlie Ward or it was Carruthers or it was whoever came to town, man, they'd show up in that staff room and we'd turn that tape on. And Pat, it's insane how hard they played. So I know Mickey and those guys coached their ass off as far as scheming guys up, but they got them to play hard, man. And it's just, you don't see it every day. I think again, you look at turnovers the last couple of years, that's indicative to me of how hard you play. And they didn't get many. So,
yep. And what really stuck out to me as he started, he was very forthcoming. And I am sure there's kids that played well that Gus and Tony did not mention. But they asked him specifically they asked him who is standing out to you right now. And up front on the defensive line, he mentioned the Desir twins. I think that's interesting. Now, listen, that does match up, particularly with Mandrell, Desir, the defensive tackle type body, more so than the end. He looked good in the scrimmage. I saw him in the spring. I didn't read too much into it because he's a freshman and starting offensive line is not there, and that's what I told people. But he's certainly made an impression on White, particularly from the physical. He called both the Desir twins physical as hell, play their butts off. He talked about D-Jacks getting pretty comfortable and doing what they want him to do. He mentioned that they've used him all over the place, defensive end, 4-eye, 3 technique, nose. So what that tells me is, like we talked about earlier, they're going to be multiple. We're going to see odd fronts. We're going to see even fronts. We're going to see a little bit of everything. And then the guy I think I want you to talk about more than anybody else on the front, because it was the only guy he mentioned, which says he did mention James Williams. Both he and Mike did. They both said that he's becoming a more well-rounded player, means he can play on first and second down now, not just against third. But he didn't mention KJ Sampson, Daniel Lyons. He did mention Diggs briefly. They did not mention the other defensive end that I think is going to be a really good player, and that's the kid from Western Kentucky. But he mentioned Jaden Jones. Talked about what a great scrimmage he had the week before. Kind of leveled off this week, but they're happy with what they see from him. Jaden, you were around when Jaden was signed with Florida State. What is Jaden's potential, and could he be a guy that fills that jack pass rusher role that Tony uses in his 3-3-5 defense?
I think unbelievable body frame, really bendy kid, runs, smooth athlete, but I think 2 knee injuries, and I'm not sure, the nature of them.
I believe it's 2.
And I'm not sure which leg, and again, the severity of those, but just it's hard when you're trying to grow into that big frame, and he's such a long, stretched out, raw bone kid coming out of high school and then JC, and then making the transition here. It's just hard. It's hard to develop when you're, in the training room and getting rehab, and you can't be out there and you can't develop your game. But a super sweet kid, extremely smart, really devout to what he's trying to do there to the game, and serious about football. So I think he fits the jack role because he's a lot big. He's just got this great frame. He's really long, and but because maybe some of that lack of development, maybe you don't want to play him at 6 technique all the time or at 5 technique. Now you can get him on the edge and let him play in some space. But I like Jaden a lot. What concerns me about hearing your comments or hearing Tony's comments about freshman defensive linemen.
Yep.
Florida State's a place where you can. Yeah, and Florida State's a place where maybe you can get some of those dudes. But more to your point, I guess more than those guys impressing, and what that concerns me that you have to play those guys, it's that the other guys are not showing up.
Right.
Glad that Darrell's getting more comfortable. It's a sea change. Those guys, when I say a sea change, he was playing a 2-eye or 3 technique almost every snap the last several years. Now he's playing a 0. And again, you talked about that, how the uncoil space is tighter and just what they're doing with him. So, but I'm glad, again, he needs to have a productive year. I have a hard time when I hear freshmen at the line of scrimmage.
Well, I will say this. Man, Darrell is slapped together now. I mean, oh God Almighty, he looks like a junior. I mean, he is a muscle bound dude. You remember? No one else is going to remember this unless you're watching this from the '80s. Remember old Stanley Williams, the defensive tackle Florida State had?
I sure do.
85. Stanley was built like a damn locomotive, and that's the way this kid looks. All right, linebackers, real quickly. Tony mentioned that particularly that Cryer and Graham are playing at a very high level, being disruptive. That Nicholson is starting to come on. He did mention Stephen Thompson and Elijah Herring, the kid from Memphis. So he seems to feel better about linebackers now than they did this spring. I still think that position group is going to be interesting. And then in the secondary, it looks like they got quite a based on what he said at one of the safety spots. And I don't know whether I'm going to assume this isn't the strong safety spot, or I'm going to say field safety, because they're going to use a middle safety, basically a field safety and a boundary safety. He said Barker Kirkland are having a great battle at one of the safety spots. Shamar Onogue looks like a completely different player at corner. They did in the spring. Of course, they keep on raving about Jerry Wilson. No Shaheem Brown talk, Shane. That was a name they left off.
Yeah, I've heard some of the rumors out there in the Twitter sphere that what you mentioned earlier. I hate that. A fifth-year senior, that's a guy that you should be in a leadership position. I find it odd when you have guys that deep in their career and you find them in this kind of limbo. It seems like they should be too far down the road with your program, that either they're over the hump or they shouldn't have gotten there in your program. If that makes sense, I don't know. So that one is weird to me. I always find it weird when older guys have some of these issues like that. And then when you talk about linebacker, I think I told you a couple weeks ago, OG, I really think he's instinctive, even though he's maybe a little undersized. He's just an instinctive cat, so nothing surprised me. And then Justin Cryer, I'm going to tell you, that's a coach's kid. Everybody knows his brother probably from Houston and what he did on the basketball court for Coach Sampson the last couple of years. But I'm going to tell you right now, Juice, if you got in a bar fight, I'd want Juice on my side, because I'm going to tell you what, he's mean, he's nasty, and he's one of those guys, when he crosses that white line, Pat, he wants to take your head off. I'm not saying he's doing that every time, but that's his mindset. And he's just a really intense guy, and I love that. So I'm glad to hear old Juice is doing good stuff.
The one thing that you never questioned about Juice, when I was out there covering him for, I guess, 2 years, he got here before the 23 season, right?
That sounds right.
All right. So he's been here 2 years. The one thing I liked about him on the practice field, on the game field, you never question his physicality or his want to. And listen, that play he made and got hurt on last year was that guy was selling out. He has no regard for his body or anybody else's body, and I think that's kind of where you got to be at linebacker. And listen, I think Herring's going to be fine. They know what they're getting there. Successful at Tennessee, successful at Memphis, but the guy I was not crazy on when they came out of high school was Graham. So I love being proven wrong when I'm wrong about a kid. When I say, hey, I'm not crazy about that take. And that kid closed out the season well last year and looks like he's going to have the best season of his career as a senior.
I was like you when we signed him. I was kind of like, I don't know. Not that you're always right. But you're like, I don't know. But then, the first couple of weeks, some guys just find their way to the football, and you found it pretty early with OG. You're like, oh, he's in the wrong place, but he's on the football kind of deal. So he just
the reason I wasn't crazy about the take is because when in high school, all they did was rush him off the edge, right? Like I was concerned they would never learn to play linebacker, because rushing off the edge is not playing linebacker. That's defensive end, right? So I was worried that he would never fit in, and he's finally fit in, and sounds like he's having a great camp.
He's kind of like Juice, when he plays with the big eyes. When I say the big eyes, I don't mean like
right.
Like
I know what you're
deer in the headlight. I mean Mike Singleton, he plays eyes bulging out of his head. That's how I feel like OG. I mean, they are just really communicative. They're really into it, and that's the kind of kids I like.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to wrap up a little bit of what they said, what we heard, because it went on. Well, you said I thought we were going to be 30 minutes. We're at 55, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We do have one piece of breaking news from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And red shirt, I believe he's a red shirt freshman, Ty Simpson, has been named starting quarterback for the Crimson Tide in their game and season opener against Florida State in Tallahassee at 3:30 on August 30th. I did do some digging today to see what the scuttlebutt was on the Crimson Tide scrimmage. I don't know whether this is a good or bad thing for Florida State, but based on what you read from Greg McElroy on Twitter and people that have access, is the offense looked really, really good in the Crimson Tide second scrimmage. So we'll see how that transitions to 19 days from now when they tee it up. Now, we were going to get into some other things. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. We do want to thank Home Instead of Tallahassee and Scott and Todd Harrell. Todd, of course, is a former Florida State baseball player. Ascension Sports, and, of course, Dan Mowry and the Mowry Law Firm. Dan, a former kicker at Florida State and former high school teammate of mine. Did you play with Dan in high school?
No, 38 Trojan Trail. I don't think I did. I think I missed him by a year. My freshman year was Kevin Carter's. Senior year, Bart Brooks, that crowd. I remember Kevin had the old love bug. He used to drive around, and him and Bart were best buds. But that was my freshman year.
They were. And listen, speaking of that, we're supposed to tentatively have Kevin on the show later this week to talk a little SEC college football. We'll probably get into some nostalgia and talk about 38-38 and probably talk about, we're probably going to have an argument about who was the best linebacker at Lincoln High School. You or Kevin, you or Kevin Carter.
I'm voting for Kevin.
Yeah, I am too. I've always said he is the greatest high school football player that Lincoln High School's ever put out. I'm not even. They put out
Really?
some good ones. They put out some good ones.
All right, let's get Dave Wilson on. Not that Dave has been there the whole time, but let's get Dave. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that we can debate that and have a couple.
Well, there's been some good ones. I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
and there's been some great ones that weren't necessarily great college football players come out of there and were great high school football players. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I know we're talking with another Florida guy later in the week. Is that true?
We will have the Gators on. We're covering the Gators on Wednesday. So excited to have those guys on with us.
Yeah, and at some point we're going to this week. We'll have a North Carolina segment with a North Carolina insider to talk about Bill Belichick and the 2025 Tar Heels. But we hope you've enjoyed the show for today. This has been the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast, episode 10, Monday, August 11th. And we will see you back either Tuesday or Wednesday with our 11th episode of the Burnham Brothers College Football Podcast. Have a great night or morning whenever you're listening to this.